Hi everyone, this is a reflection on my personal infographic project. I had a lot of fun making it, and so I'm glad I can look back and see what I learned. So I started collecting data at midnight on October 30th, and I did this for about 5 days. And it was a pretty painstaking process to get everything written down. I originally started on my phone and then transferred everything here to Excel. I had a little bit more detail, I would say, on the phone in terms of the interactions, the description, especially when it came to text. I just wrote down text for on the Excel sheets, but on my phone I've got a lot more information about what was actually going on. And then I wrote down whether the interaction was with male, female, animals. I played with a couple puppies, so that came up. And then the time period, I was really interested in seeing how long my interactions were lasting typically. And I think I might have skewed the results a little bit by suggesting that texts are always instant because I did have a lot of conversations that went on for hours and hours through text. And they are listed as instant here. But there weren't too many of those, so I don't think it threw it off too much. And I also wrote down my emotions, how I was feeling about on a scale of 0 being sad and 10 or extremely sad, and then 10 being ecstatic, extremely happy. I didn't hit 0 or 10 because those are pretty extreme on the scale. And so here's my data. I made some draft charts and graphs to see kind of how everything broke down. This wasn't anything I was going to use in Photoshop, but I just wanted to have an idea of what was going on with what I collected. And then I got to my first draft. I used Salvador Dali's The Persistence of Memory as my wallpaper initially. And I think that was a poor choice, honestly. As you can see, I've got a lot of simple themes going on with this graph and a lot of text, and the busy background really distracted from that. So I decided it was probably not a good idea to keep using that. And the other thing that I really learned from this first draft was that the average mood scale just it didn't really fit with anything else, both graphically and in terms of the data and the conclusions. So I decided to take it out for my second draft. And then here I've got a simpler but still pretty complicated background, but just a lot less distracting. It actually helps accentuate, in my opinion, the graphs, especially the male-female one right here. But I did have some issues here. For example, my title was way too generic and boring looking. Didn't stand out at all. I had too many fonts going on. The objects just didn't flow too well in my opinion, and I had a lot of empty space in the middle. And so I made a couple changes and I got to my final draft, which I'll open up in Photoshop. I'm really glad with the way it turned out. The wallpaper is supposed to symbolize the woven fabric of my reality, my life, being all these interactions, being in the individual threads. And I added a filter to Pookie here to make him a little bit less distracting. I think that turned out well. The title I definitely focused on a lot more. I wanted it to stand out and really be the first thing that caught people's attention when they saw this. And so I used a picture of a crowd and I applied the plastic wrap effect to it and used some text as the mask. And then I reorganized the objects in order to make them flow a little bit better and get rid of the white spaces I had. And again, yeah, I'm really glad with the way it turned out, but I did learn a lot doing this project, the first thing I learned was you want to collect as much data as possible. Can't stress that enough. At first, it was pretty comprehensive, but by the end of day 5, my notes were a little more skimpy, I would say, compared to the thorough notes I had in the beginning. And that's just because it was kind of a long process and difficult. Well, not difficult, but kind of painstaking, writing down every single thing you're doing throughout the day. I also learned that you want to get as much feedback as possible. That's probably where I learned the most. Getting that fresh perspective from someone who hasn't been working on the project and seeing it for hours and hours was super beneficial. And yeah, I'm just really glad I had this experience.